Hello, you're watching A News. I'm Bakhtiar Sanova, and let's see the top stories shaping our world. Israel launched airstrikes in Gaza, accusing Hamas of violating the ceasefire. The Louvre Museum in Paris closed after thieves stole priceless jewelry in a well-planned robbery. And Pakistan and Afghanistan agreed to immediate ceasefire after peace talks in Doha. Israel launched air and artillery strikes in southern Gaza on Sunday, accusing Hamas of breaching the ceasefire. According to medical sources, at least 5 people were killed. Israeli officials reported that Hamas militants fired at its troops in Rafah, prompting the retaliatory strikes. Following the incident, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with security leaders and ordered strong action against terrorist targets in the Gaza Strip. Hamas denied these claims, saying Rafah is under Israeli control. Earlier this week, the U.S. State Department said it had credible reports that Hamas is planning an imminent attack on civilians in Gaza, which would violate the ceasefire agreement. A statement released Saturday warned that any planned attack against Palestinians will be a direct and grave breach of the ceasefire, jeopardizing the progress made through mediation efforts. Meanwhile, Hamas dismissed the claim as false, accused Israel of supporting armed groups involved in violence and criminal activities. The Rafah crossing border between Egypt and Gaza is still closed, holding up humanitarian aid deliveries. Authorities say its reopening depends on agreements reached between Israel and Hamas. Aid organizations are preparing supplies on the Egyptian side, ready to enter Gaza once the crossing opens.
The Rafah crossing between Egypt and Gaza faced new complications ahead of its planned reopening. Aid deliveries into the enclave were delayed as displaced Palestinians prepare for winter. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar had said the crossing would likely reopen on Sunday. However, on Saturday night, the Israeli Prime Minister's office announced it would remain closed until further notice, and the reopening now depends on Hamas fulfilling commitments on the return of Israeli hostages' bodies and the ceasefire framework. Earlier on Saturday, the Palestinian embassy in Cairo had said the crossing would open Monday for Palestinians in Egypt wishing to return to Gaza. The delay left aid trucks stranded on the Egyptian side. Conditions in Gaza are worsening as residents face their third winter since the latest conflict, with falling temperatures expected.
Most of the trucks are loaded with food, which might spoil, so we are trying to be very focused on getting them in quickly and completing the procedures in advance. This way, the food in the trucks won't spoil due to the prolonged hold-up. We are preparing as many ready-to-eat meals as possible because there is no fuel there.
An Israel-Hamas ceasefire, mediated by Egypt, Qatar, Turkey and the US, took effect on the 10th of October. Its first phase covers prisoner exchanges, humanitarian aid into Gaza, and partial Israeli withdrawals.
Israelis in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem are calling for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's resignation. Demonstrators are also urging the government to secure the return of the remaining deceased hostages.
Thousands of Israeli protesters took to the streets of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, demanding that the government finalize the hostages deal and ensure the return of the remaining deceased hostages from Gaza. The demonstrators vow to continue protesting until Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu resigns.
We need to bring them home, as we promised, till the last hostages will be back. Each and every one of them are our brothers, and we want them back. And their families need closure. They need to bury them and to mourn them, and we need them back home.
Benjamin Netanyahu is the one to blame. He's the one responsible. He is in government right now, still 2 years after the October 7, all those years, almost 20 years in government. He is the main reason, he alone is the main reason why we had this event. all of us, the Jewish people, the country has suffered immensely from Benjamin Netanyahu, one of the worst prime ministers this country ever had, if not the worst of them.
The protesters are also calling on US President Donald Trump to expedite the return of the hostages. Netanyahu has stalled the reopening of Gaza's Rafah crossing to allow aid to flow until Hamas ensures the retrieval of the remaining bodies. So far, Hamas has returned 12 of the 28 bodies of captives being held in Gaza.
The World Food Programme has reopened bakeries in Gaza in an effort to address widespread malnutrition. The agency says these efforts were made possible by the allowance of aid to reach the war-torn area.
A bakery in the Gazan city of Deir al-Balah has come back to life just a day after aid reached the bomb-ravaged area. It is one of 9 World Food Programme bakeries now up and running. The United Nations says it aims to open 30 more bakeries now that ingredients are accessible.
They are now pumping out 300,000 pieces of bread every single day, and that's because we can now get the flour, the sugar, the yeast in, but also importantly, the fuel that actually motors these machines. And it just demonstrates that when a ceasefire holds, we can really quickly rebuild. We can get the food production working again. And this is going to head off the starvation that we've seen by opening up these bakeries, these kitchens, by pumping out food at this level. We want to get 1 million meals out there every day, and we're on track to do that.
While the bakery in Deir al-Balah is operating thanks to incoming aid, the UN says its convoys are struggling to reach famine-hit areas of northern Gaza because of war-damaged roads and the continued closure of key routes. On average, around 560 metric tons of food have entered the Gaza Strip each day since the US brokered halt to 2 years of devastating war. But the World Food Programme says this is still far below the scale of need. Thousands of aid vehicles would have to enter weekly to address widespread malnutrition, homelessness, and the collapse of infrastructure in the Gaza City region.
The Louvre Museum in Paris closed on Sunday after thieves stole valuable jewels from the French crown jewels collection. Officials say the robbery was carefully planned and an investigation is ongoing.
The Louvre Museum in Paris remained closed to the public on Sunday after a brazen robbery involving the theft of historic royal jewellery. Thieves broke into the Apollo Gallery, which houses the French crown jewels, and stole multiple items from the Napoleon and Empress Josephine collections. French Culture Minister Rachida Dati confirmed the incident and described the heist as the work of professionals targeting valuable cultural heritage.
We came immediately, a couple of minutes after we received information of this robbery. To be completely honest, this operation lasted almost 4 minutes. It was very quick. We have to say that these are professionals. Organised crime today targets objects of art, and museums, of course, have become targets because France, as you know, is a country of heritage, a country with historical objects of heritage with great value.
Investigators believe the suspects used a forklift and a crane to access the building. They entered through a broken window and escaped on motorbikes before police could respond. No injuries were reported among visitors or museum staff. Police stayed at the museum all day while investigators collected evidence and examined the scene. French media reported that one of the stolen pieces, believed to be Empress Eugenie's broken crown, was found discarded near the museum a few hours later. The Louvre announced it would stay closed for the rest of the day for what it called exceptional reasons, while the investigation continues.
Bolivia is gearing up to hold a presidential runoff election on Sunday after no candidate secured an outright victory in the first round of voting on August 17th. The first round result marked a stunning blow to the incumbent movement to Socialism Party, which has dominated the South American country's politics for almost 20 years. Polls opened at 8 a.m. local time and are expected to close at 4 p.m.
As voters in Bolivia head to the polls this Sunday, the stakes could not be higher. After nearly 20 years of one-party rule, the country stands on the cusp of major change. The runoff pits centrist Senator Rodrigo Paz against conservative former President Jorge Tuto Quiroga. Both candidates aim to roll back elements of the MAS era, state-led model, but differ in how drastically.
I ask everyone to join us this Sunday to open a path with hope and a bright future for Bolivia. I believe that after 20 destructive, unfortunate and disastrous years, we have a unique opportunity to end that darkness and for the sun of a new dawn to shine for my Bolivia for a long time. We will see that on October 19th.
Rodrigo Paz, a centrist senator, also addressed voters, meanwhile leads with a message of renewal after the long dominance of the Movement to Socialism party.
On August 17th, the country marked it as a cycle that ended over and out. We are moving to a new stage of Bolivian democracy in the 21st century, in the bicentennial year. It was an exhausting cycle. The abuses, corruption, extreme powers.
Bolivia faces its worst economic crisis in decades, with double-digit inflation, fuel and dollar shortages, and plunging natural gas exports. Both candidates vow to rebuild relations with the United States, move away from alliances with China, Russia and Iran, and overhaul the state-led system blamed for the downturn. The runoff takes place on the 19th October, with the new president to be inaugurated on the 8th November.
Tropical storm Fengshen, locally called Ramil, has killed at least 5 people and left 2 missing as it swept through the Philippines this weekend. The storm made landfall in Sorsogon on Saturday with winds of up to 90 kilometers per hour, causing severe flooding and landslides across the province. In Roxas City, residents were evacuated by rubber boats. Rescue teams navigated submerged streets to help families reach safer ground. The storm weakened slightly over Samar Island, but may re-intensify once it moves back over the sea. Flights were cancelled as warnings were issued for low-lying areas. Madagascar's Gen Z says they want a real say in the country's future. The youth movement is pushing back against being sidelined after protests ousted the president.
After an elite army colonel joined Madagascar's Gen Z protests earlier this month, forcing the president to flee the country, the youth movement has expressed mixed feelings about the military's involvement. Protests that began over electricity and water shortages quickly morphed into an uprising against then-President Andry Rajoelina. Days later, Colonel Michael Randrianirina was sworn in as the new leader. The movement Gen Z Collective, a coalition of several protest groups, has signalled frustration at being sidelined and insists on being part of the discussions to build a new political system.
For the moment, the process, we are not very happy on how things are done, because we feel a little bit sidelined the first days. And what we really want to show is that we are not only here to be sidelined, and we are not here only for the protest and for being the muscles of the protest and for a new regime to take over. But we are here to be in the middle of the discussions, in the middle of the negotiations, and in the middle of the construction of the new political system.
Randrianirina has said the military will govern alongside a civilian administration for up to 2 years before organising new elections. Many wonder if the concerns of young people will be addressed or, as in the past, ignored.
They've met with us. They say they're ready to work with the youth. The only concern is that they shouldn't be influenced by outsiders, by the international community. So the same thing doesn't keep happening. We want Madagascar to be truly independent without anyone manipulating the military behind the scenes. Hopefully, they're really here to organise elections and set up a new system that can change life in Madagascar.
Madagascar's young population, with an average age of just 19, faces a litany of problems, largely caused by mismanagement from a succession of older leaders. Even Rajoelina, who at 34 became the world's youngest president after a 2009 coup, disappointed the youth by failing to deliver prosperity or basic services by the time he was ousted in his 50s. Since independence from France in 1960 until 2020, GDP per capita nearly halved, according to World Bank data, making Madagascar one of the few nations worse off over that period.
Afghanistan and Pakistan have agreed to an immediate ceasefire during talks in Doha, following a week of fierce border clashes that marked the worst violence between the two countries since the Taliban seized power in Kabul in 2021. Pakistan's Defense Minister Khawaja Mohammad Asif announced the agreement in a social media post, stating that both countries will respect each other's territory. Delegations from both sides are set to meet on October 25th in Istanbul, with Qatar's foreign ministry saying the follow-up meetings aim to ensure the sustainability of the ceasefire and verify its implementation in a reliable and lasting manner. After the new ceasefire is announced between Pakistan and Afghanistan, many people in Pakistan hope tensions will calm. However, some remain doubtful.
After days of deadly clashes at the border, Pakistan and Afghanistan agreed to a new ceasefire on Sunday, aimed at easing tensions and restoring calm. The move was welcomed by many in Pakistan.
This is a very positive and welcome development because we had been witnessing tension between the two countries for quite some time, and Pakistan had also given a strong response to Afghanistan. Recently, we saw that Pakistani and Afghan officials met in Qatar, in which a ceasefire was announced. Pakistan's Defense Minister Khawaja Asif was also present there.
Look, the peace agreement between Pakistan and Afghanistan is a good development. We are neighbouring Muslim countries and we should live together in harmony. If tensions arise, both nations will suffer losses. Pakistan does not want to create conflict with a fellow Muslim country or worsen the situation.
However, some residents voiced a different perspective, expressing scepticism about the ceasefire.
The Afghans who have been with us are very bad. They have made us do everything. I have been in Rawalpindi since 1992, and there was a lot of peace before. Since the children of Afghans arrived and grew up, they have started robberies, thefts, and idolatry. They have created many problems for us. As Muslims, we treat them like our brothers, but they are the ones who speak the word.
The two sides are expected to hold follow-up talks in Istanbul on October 25th to work out the details of the ceasefire.
Iran announced on Saturday that it's no longer bound by restrictions under the 2015 nuclear deal, as the landmark agreement with world powers officially expired after 10 years. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry said that all provisions and mechanisms of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action have now ended. However, Tehran reiterated its commitment to diplomacy. The 2015 accord signed with the US, UK, France, Germany, Russia and China had placed limits on Iran's nuclear activities in exchange for sanctions relief. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Tehran had fully complied with its obligations under the US withdrawal in 2018 and accused Western signatories of further violating the deal by imposing new sanctions. The second meeting of Azerbaijan-Kazakhstan's Supreme Council, Interstate Council, will be held in Astana. President Ilham Aliyev said during an interview with Kazinform news agency. This comes as both nations aim to strengthen their strategic partnership. According to reports ahead of the visit, discussions will focus on expanding mutually beneficial cooperation and exploring new areas of collaboration. The first meeting of the Council was held last year in Baku. Staying on these two countries, both are strengthening their long-standing partnership from trade and transport to energy and cultural exchange. Built on shared history and trust between the two Caspian nations have signed more than 160 agreements, turning decades of friendship into a solid strategic alliance.
Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan are deepening a dynamic partnership rooted in shared language, culture, and long-standing trust. Since establishing diplomatic ties in 1992, the two nations have grown from friendly neighbors into strategic allies. Regular meetings between President Ilham Aliyev and President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev have turned political dialogue into concrete results, from energy cooperation to transport and digital trade. In just the past 2 years, the two leaders have met more than 5 times at major summits, from the Organization of Turkic States to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Economic ties are expanding fast. Trade turnover reached $314 million in 2023, up almost 120% from 2020. Energy, logistics, and agriculture drive the exchange, while both sides work to boost cargo through the Middle Corridor, connecting Asia to Europe via Baku and Aktau ports. The partnership rests on a strong legal foundation, 163 agreements signed, including landmark declarations on strategic alliance and mutual cooperation dating back to 2004, 2005, and 2022. With expanding trade, shared projects, and deep political trust, Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan are shaping the Caspian into a corridor of stability, energy, and unity across the Turkic world.
Azerbaijan's village of Khinalik has been named the best tourism village by the UN World Tourism Organization. The award ceremony and the third annual network meeting for 2025 was held in Wuzhou in China. The initiative aims to recognize exemplary rural tourism destinations that preserve their cultural and historical heritage while meeting the demands of modern tourism. As a result of the competition, Khinalik has been recognized both nationally and internationally as a notable tourist and cultural historic destination. This recognition is expected to significantly boost Khinalik's visibility, increase tourist flows, and contribute to the well-being of the local community. Thank you for joining me. That's your news update for now. Make sure you stay tuned to A News for more.